welcome to How to Run Profitable Retreats podcast, the podcast that guides you not to only host retreats that thrive financially, but also transform people's lives. I'm your host, Lainey Cavazos, and each week I bring you the best strategies and personal insights to help you create retreat experiences that transform lives, both your clients and your own. In our journey together, we'll dive into the secrets behind successful retreats, from crafting a unique atmosphere to mastering the logistics that ensure profitability. Whether you're tuning in for inspiring interviews with leading retreat experts or seeking actionable advice in our solo episodes, this podcast is your go-to resource for turning your retreat visions into reality. Don't miss out on any of our episodes and subscribe now. For more tools and a free guide on creating your own six-figure retreat business, visit theretreatplanner.com. Now let's get started and make your retreat dreams come true. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of How to Run Profitable Retreats. And I'm so excited to have Ralph Velasco here with me today. And I'm so thrilled to have someone with so much experience actually organizing tours. He has been doing it for over 16 years. He actually started in 2008, and he was really focusing on travel photographer and then international tour organizer. So he has created and led over 120 highly rated international tours in well over 30 countries and 7 continents. And then 100 domestic tours in the US. So imagine how excited I am to have someone who's such an expert on organizing tours. We're going to be having an amazing conversation of like how retreats are very intentional, but also we're going to be talking about like the logistics and things that comes when it comes to planning an international trip, right? May it be a tour, may it be a retreat, because it's very important for us to understand that, right? And when he's not traveling, Ralph is in Chicago, and he's been location independent for 10 plus years. And well, he spends like 8 to 9 months on the road every year. That's kind of crazy, right? And he has so many books on travel photography. I'll let you go and find all the details below so you get to know him more. So let's just jump into this conversation. Ralph, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. So let's just jump to the gist. So you've been organizing so many tours throughout the space. What would you say is really the biggest thing that like you learned about hosting all these groups tours for small groups? Because I saw your website, you do groups from like 6 to 12 people. So very intimate, right? It's a different energy than these groups of like, I don't know, thinking about a cruise with 5,000 people on board.
Yeah, there's such a different dynamic when you've only got 6 to 10, 12 people on a trip. And what I like about that specifically is that it allows us to stay in much more intimate hotels where perhaps we can take over the whole property and it's just our group there. That's always nice. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes. And we can get into smaller restaurants that are owned by local families, and we can get our smaller vehicle into smaller villages. And so that just allows us to have much smaller, more intimate experiences rather than the big bus tours where they have to stay at big hotels, go to big buffet style restaurants and have these big buses and can only get into certain places. So that's what I like about our trips is that they're very, very intimate.
I love this. This brings me back to some of my trips in France. So actually, like we rented these big vans. They're like Rams, and they're like for 12 people, and they're like super huge. Europe is not made for those big size cars. Right? Like we used to go inside of like the underground parking lots and like measure the car, and something would like just like little bit from the ceiling. We were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna scratch the top of the car. This is crazy, right? So like a lot of the cities and a lot of the towns where you want to actually go, where they're like very unique, right, and connected, and they're very authentic, might not actually have the access for you to go inside of these 40 people, 40-seater buses. So it makes a lot more sense in that space that you can create more curated experiences.
Yeah, and the idea is to get to meet the locals, and for 40 people or more to come into someone's workshop or place of business is not very practical.
Mm.
So it allows that much more intimate experience, which is what I really love. The more and more I travel, that's what I'm looking for when it comes to these experiences that we have.
Right. Yeah. So I think also this makes a lot of sense when we connect it into the space of retreats, because most of retreats are actually like small size groups, right? Like we really try to create these intimate spaces. Of course, you have the Joe Dispenza retreats are 1,500 people, but in general, you're gonna go and look for experiences that are similar to the ones that you're offering. Would that make sense for you in the space of like really like the intimacy and like the connections that people build inside of the these tours is so much higher because they get to spend so much time together?
Yeah, and they get to spend quality time together, where if it were a bigger retreat with 50 or 100 people even, then you can't possibly get to know everyone well over a week or so period of time. So I think that's extremely important that the groups are small, intimate, and we're trying to teach people how to be more you know, the be here now. Um,
Mm,
I, I tell a story of how this all came to be because I am a professional travel photographer, and I was the number one person that needed these books and this series. And so I wrote
mm,
them for myself, really, because I tend to spend the whole trip with my eye behind the viewfinder of the camera. And photographers tend to do that, people that are interested in photography. And so my first book that I wrote was called On Travel Photography 101 Tips for Developing Your Photographic Eye and More. And the last tip in the book is to put the camera down.
mm.
And it probably should be the first tip in the book. Yeah, because as photographers, we go through these wonderful trips with our eyes against the viewfinder of a
Mm,
camera. And I would often ask myself when I come back from a beautiful trip, was I really there? Yeah, I was
mm.
there physically. I've got the passport stamp. I've got the photographs, the
I stayed in the
receipt.
hotel. Yeah.
Yeah, the receipts, etc. But was I there mentally? Because I was like this the whole time with my eye
Mm,
against that viewfinder. So as I grow older, I want to be more intentional about being in the place and be here now. When I was in high school, I went on a trip to Peru for a summer to be a volunteer. And we were young boys, 16 years old from my high school. And after a while, we were moaning and groaning a little bit about missing our mother's cooking, our own beds, our friends and family back home. And one of the priests that was one of the leaders of the trip said, be here now. You've got this amazing experience to be on this other part of the world, and not many people have this opportunity. Make the best of it and learn from the differences, not try to figure out, why things aren't the same and try to make them the same. And so
mm.
I've carried that with me all this time, and it's finally come to a point where I said, there needs to be a book out there about teaching mindfulness and travel.
Ah, you're bringing me back to so many memories of my travels. I love traveling the same as you. I don't think
Yeah.
I've organized as many trips as you have for sure. I definitely love it. And I do remember a very specific moment in my life where I actually was in Istanbul and I was in a park. It was, I think, the day before I was flying back. And there was this beautiful sunset. It was like it had all these colors. I was on the top of a hill, right? I was in a park. I was sitting on a bench. And then the first thing I did is I grabbed my phone to take a picture, right? And then in that moment, I was like, why am I looking at life through a lens? I put back my phone. And then since then, all my friends complain that I never take enough pictures of my trips. They're like, you're the one who travels the most and you never really share or take many pictures of what you're doing and where you're going. Like, we would like to know. And I'm like, well, I don't take that many because I am there. I am not thinking about like other people. I'm not thinking about like how my Instagram is going to look like. I am present. Like, I rather watch the sunset than take a picture of the sunset. And I think this is something that really comes into the space when we're doing these tours where there's an intention behind it, when we're going into retreats. It makes such a huge difference because you're choosing to be there, right? You chose to come into this trip to Antarctica or Cuba or France or Bali or whatever it may be. And you're there for a reason. There's something that you were looking for and you found it in that space, right? So I think this is such a powerful message nowadays that we're all glued to our phones, right? Our attention span is tiny. Like, goldfish have a 12 seconds of attention span. Humans, we have 9 seconds. Like, I mean, how can goldfish have a higher attention span than us? It's crazy. Right? So,
Yeah.
but all these things happen, and we just need to be super intentional about actually being present. And I think that really makes a huge sense when you're talking about making these like smaller groups for trips, right? Because you don't get lost in the crowd. Like, someone can call you out and be like, hello, you're missing the bus. Let's go.
That's right. Yeah, and these phones that are with us now 24/7 are designed to take us away from where we are. You know, they're designed for us to be able to look and find out that fun fact about the movie we're watching, or what the places that we want to go to, or whatever that might be. But they're designed to take us away from where we are. And so the number one tip is to put the phone away, put the
Mm.
camera down, and be where you are.
Yeah, so actually one of the things that I like teaching inside of my program, especially like mastering the art of retreat planning, where we really cover from A to Z into the space of retreat planning, and we focus a lot on like intentionality, our clients, pricing, selling, the whole shebang, and then of course logistics and operation is the one that actually tells you what if, as an option, right? Like, no one has to do anything. What if you actually invited people once they come into the retreat to put their phones away, not to use them? And then you hire a photographer that comes and takes pictures for them. So they will have the pictures. They will be able to share it on social media. They will have everything that they want. So, their family and friends can be happy, but then they don't need to be plugged to their phone. They can really have an opportunity to unplug.
Yeah, that's a great exercise. That'd be a tough one for the hardcore photographers, that's for sure. They'd be going crazy. But I love it.
Yeah.
What you need.
Well, yeah, or you just have certain times where you can take out the
Yeah,
phone. We did
yeah.
this with another retreat once. It was like, okay, so don't take your phones out throughout the day. We're gonna tell you at what time there's a time for you to take your phones out. So there was like an hour a day during one session where people could take their phones out, take the pictures, do the whole thing, and they were like, but you're not allowed to look at the pictures. You're not allowed to look at the 12 different selfies that you took and choose which one you like and then edit it and go post it. No, you
Yeah,
can go ahead, you can take all the pictures, do the thing, but you're not allowed to like actually go and select and be like, this is the one I'm keeping or not. It's like, you go, you take the pictures, that's it. Once you go home, you can decide which one you want to post. If none worked, well, too bad for you, because it was just an exercise also for you not to get fully distracted by the camera. You still got the pictures, but you were not drawn into the whole process of like, now I have to post it on social media and people need to see it and then people are going to like it and I need to comment back, and this whole thing that it just becomes a huge cycle that is actually very hard to stop.
that makes so much sense. Yeah.
So endless possibilities when it comes to hosting tours and retreats, actually bringing people into the space. I'm going into a tour in India and there's the opportunity to actually bring a person to do a documentary on you in India, right? So you hire the guy, he comes with you, he films you, you have your documentary by the end of the trip. You don't have to actually do anything. You don't have to take your phone. And actually, probably it's going to be a lot nicer because they're going to be able to see the angles. They're actually videographers. They know what they're doing, right? So the quality of what you're going to get is completely different.
I like that idea.
See, already some new things to bring into the space. No, because it like makes a lot of sense. You get to be present and someone else can take care of that piece of you creating content, right? Nowadays that a lot of people are like basing their businesses on social media. You do need to create content, right? We're not gonna say you don't. Like people need to create content to sell their retreats, like to go into retreats, to showcase what's happening, what's not. But what about if we think about different ways that really actually benefit more the attendees?
Yeah, it's all about balance, that the balance of with the camera, without, and
Mm.
times to say that, no cameras for now, but you can later or whatever. I like that idea.
Mm. So tell me, like, I'm just so curious, after running so many tours around the world, what is like the craziest story of something that happened in one of your tours?
Let's see. One of the funny stories that happened one time is I arrived in Tbilisi, Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, and I was picked up by my local tour operator, who was a young woman who had a company there, was going to show me around. And when she picked me up at the airport, she was a little bit intimidated with driving. She probably didn't drive that much, and Georgia is known for not having the best drivers, let's say. So I could tell she was a little bit hesitant driving back to the hotel, and she must have seen my hesitation a little bit, but she said, "Don't worry, Ralph. My father's going to be driving us around the next couple days so that I could talk to you and not be less distracted." So I'm thinking to myself, "Oof, thank
Good.
goodness, that this could be a long couple days if she has to drive." Well, it turns out her father was even worse than her. And he was someone who, I don't know how, but he would slow down to pass someone, and he would speed up when someone would try to pass him, if you could picture that. So kind of the opposite of what you would think. Anyway, I was not enjoying the long drives with this man because it was a little dangerous. And so,
To say the least.
to say the least, it was a little dangerous. So I actually made an excuse to get out of a full day of driving with him because I just didn't feel right. So then at the end of the trip, they're going to drive me to the Armenian border, which is just south of Georgia, to go finish up my trip in Armenia. And they're going to take me to the border to meet the local guide over there. So we get to the border and they drop me off, and the young woman says, "Ralph, we're going to wait out here for 10 or 15 minutes. Just make sure you get through security and to the other side." I said, "Okay, great." So I go in, I slide my passport across the thing to the immigration agent, and he looks at it. He says, "Do you have a visa for Azerbaijan?" And I said, I'm not going to Azerbaijan. I'm going to Armenia." He said, "This is the Azerbaijani border."
No,
Yeah, and I
no.
said,
Oh my
"What?
gosh.
Oh my gosh!" So there was no flag out front, no sign, no nothing, no indication that this was the Azerbaijani border. But I trusted my tour operator to know where it was, right?
Yeah. Oh
So
my
here I
God.
am thinking, okay, I've gotten away from these people now. I don't have to drive with them anymore. And I have to go back outside and tell them this is the wrong border. And the Armenian border is 45 minutes away. So I had to get back in the car, go with them, drive there, and then cross the border there.
Mm.
So that was just a kind of a funny story that happened to me not too long ago.
But
And
yeah, I have to say something that really comes to mind in this space, and I think this is great for the audience listening to keep it in mind. So many times we want to hire vendors from the countries, and it's amazing. I love it. Like it's always about supporting the local market and whatnot. But you want to make sure that you know who you're hiring because, like, imagine if you were with your group and then suddenly everyone has to go to Armenia and then everyone is in Azerbaijan.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Thank
how would
goodness they
how would you
required a.
look like? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it would make me look terrible. So that's why I always go out and scout a year in advance and try everything because then I make the mistakes or the mistakes get made on me, not my clients. So we get those things out of the way.
Yeah.
But
I, yeah, I can
yeah, but
imagine a situation, right? Like uh transferring cars to go like I don't know, walking through the border or whatever. And then another band is maybe picking you up and then you cross and there's like no one to pick you up because you're in the wrong
that's right.
border. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, thank goodness they required a visa because otherwise they would have let me into Azerbaijan, and then how would I have gotten out to, like try to find them again or anything?
yeah.
So yeah, it worked out, but it was just kind of a fun story in the end.
Oh no, totally. But yeah, I can imagine it. No, and I think this is why it's so important to actually work with people who are vendors of the space that you know that maybe they're coming from a referral. Like so much of like the events that I host, actually I work with like suppliers that I already know, right? And if I don't know them personally, someone else recommended them, someone that I trust the way the quality of the events that they're running. And that makes such a huge difference, right? Like
Yeah.
I did once, we did a retreat in San Miguel de Allende near Mexico City, a few hours from Mexico City. And I actually went out there like 3 months, 3 weeks before because we actually had massages booked for every single person, but I was not going to bring my masseuse from the town that was like 5 hours away. So I went and I tested all the masseuses because I wanted to make sure that the quality of the massages that they were getting, like these were high ticket retreat, right? It's not like you can just call whoever and then let's hope that they're good.
Yeah,
So doing your due diligence, it's so important.
absolutely.
Definitely, I have not had anyone drive me to the wrong to the wrong border for sure. I hope it doesn't happen. But it like so many things can happen, and that's why I think like logistics and organizing and planning it's such a crucial piece of running a business like this.
For sure. That's all it is it's all logistics and trying to link everything together so it works seamlessly and no one realizes how difficult it really is.
Yeah, I always say that retreats are not for the faint of heart.
You said that.
They're not because you have to set it for a specific date. Like sometimes that doesn't work, right? It's like it's such a different space. And then also you have to plan logistics, people's meals, dietary restrictions, all these kind of different things. It's so rewarding. It's totally worth it. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not just for anyone. Not everyone like has the energy or the intention or the desire to actually go through the planning of every single detail. Like now this question is coming up to me. So what are the little things that you feel that like planning when you're planning a tour are very important, but they might seem tiny in the scope of things, but they really make a difference?
Yeah, just getting people around is very important, obviously, but it's something that we often forget about because we do it every day. But when you're on a group trip, you want to make sure that everything is timed just right so that people aren't waiting unnecessarily. Um, my trips are fairly planned pretty precisely because perhaps it's something to do with an appointment we have with someone, or it's about getting ahead of the tourist crowds, or it's the light of the day that we want, or something
Mm,
specific reason. So if one thing's off, then it throws everything else off. And that
mm,
can be a big problem. So I try to do things pretty precisely. So if you know that one driver's late or something or person's late, that can throw off everything. And
Right.
so I just make it very clear at the beginning that the one thing I'm a stickler about is having everyone be on time.
Okay, amazing. Well, I have to say that this is a little bit different sometimes, not from every retreat. Some retreats are very much on schedule, uh, but actually a lot of retreats allow a lot of free time and like breaks in between here and there, like because you want to like have a mix of transformation plus integration, right? And like
Yeah,
when you're going into a different country, you might have a piece that is more like cultural, right? So maybe you're having activities in the morning, but then in the afternoons you have other activities. And it's a little bit like it's a slightly different way to build the itineraries, I would say. Some people do it like they pack it like back to back and it's perfect, but you will find a lot of other retreats that are like, for me, for example, I don't share the itinerary of the retreat. Like no one knows what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen, but no one knows what's going to happen at which time. They get
okay,
actually the schedule that morning.
okay,
So they're
yeah,
like, okay, they only know we're meeting at 9 or at 8 or whatever time it is. And then we start from there.
yeah,
Because I don't want them to be thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard, or how am I going to feel about this, right? So I like to keep the element of surprise. Not everyone does that. It's not actually quite common when it comes to retreats. A lot of people do want to know the itineraries, but I want people to release control.
yeah,
I want them to come into the space, just trust that it's going to be good. They know what's going to happen. They just don't know, they don't have to know when, because
right.
does it really make a difference for them? Does it really change the results? Like, are they going to be happier or more upset if one activity is on day 1 or is it on day 3? So I think that's quite like that can be a big difference between tours and retreats. Because on a tour, you know, day 1 we're going to Paris, day 2 we're going here, day 3 we're going there. There's like a very, very clear schedule and you can follow it. But when it comes to retreats, you also have sometimes like a little bit more flexibility into the space of like you're staying longer in one place, right? You tend to stay in, let's say, one property or one hotel for the whole stay, and then you go to different places and then you come back. But you're not changing hotels as often. There's some differences when it comes to retreats because you want people to actually have a lot of downtime, because when they're coming into a space of a retreat, many times, yes, there is something that they want to heal, but they also want to rest. They want to unplug themselves from their day-to-day life. And if you go back into a super hectic itinerary, they might feel like they're still in the office.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. And I my trips are typically a half day scheduled, half day free time.
Ah, amazing.
Yeah, and always you know, there might be a full free full day, but then a full free day too. You know, so it balances out to about a half day scheduled, half day free time. I don't include all meals, so people can go out and explore on their
Mm,
own, make their own experiences, and not feel like they have to be with the group all the time. They go out as a couple or small groups or by themselves, skip a meal. So it's really important. But then to have some sort of a framework
of
to
course.
build the timing around is always really important too. So it's a good
So if you,
balance.
so if you could give one advice to people who are running like trips globally, internationally, what would be that thing that you think like they should really know before they jump into this space?
Yeah, I would say that the one thing that's super important that I learned early on is setting expectations. So letting people know exactly what they're in for. And that's why I do like to have, and I understand why you don't have a schedule. That's interesting. Um, but one of the reasons I do have a schedule is so that people know exactly what they're in for. And if the trip looks too busy for them, they'll count themselves out. If it's not busy enough, they'll do the same. But I like to set the expectation so that people know exactly what they're in for, because you don't want someone to come on your trip expecting one kind of thing and then they
Yeah,
get something else, because that's
right.
only going to make them, and you may have provided exactly what you said you were going to provide, but that's not what they expected, and they probably should have filtered themselves out at the beginning, and because they wanted something different. So that would be my number one tip, I think.
I like that. Yeah, I think this is very, very important because, yes, like if someone who's not supposed to come to your retreat or your tour actually shows up, it's not just about their experience that they're not going to be happy. It's about everyone else. Everyone else will feel it.
That's right.
Right. I remember the story. There's this big retreat center in Mexico, and it works really like a well-oiled machine. So they have groups coming every Sunday. And I remember there was this there's this story about one woman who comes in, she's in a very bad mood. Everything is like prepaid. They're coming for 7 days. And then she was told like, well, if you cannot, like she was mean to the other attendees, like right from the get-go, from like the check-in. And they're like, well, if you cannot apologize to them and do that, you have two choices. Like you can either stay and be nice and go apologize, or you can leave. That's it. Right. At the end, she left. But it was very clear, like there was no space for, oh, maybe test it out and see how you feel. No, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. Right. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, like if you cannot play nice, basically, right? I think it's so important. So many times when we're in the space of like creating like spaces for transformation, we also want to help everyone. We want to like please people, right? We become people pleasers. We're like, but they really want to come. They should come. And at the end of the day, also, like when it comes specifically to the retreats, you're not allowed to single out people and say you can't come. Like you can't, like people will sue you for this. Yeah, you cannot say like, oh, you're not qualified to come to my retreat. No, they can qualify you, but you cannot tell them back that they can't. So the best way is to really set very, very clear expectations from the beginning. So if it's not for them, then they can take themselves out and not actually come to the retreat or the tour. So I really think this is a very, very valuable topic.
Yeah.
So Ralph, where can people find more about your tours and what you do and all these amazing books? I know we're gonna have all the information below, so you can all go check out all the amazing things that Ralph has been doing. But if someone wants to reach out, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so my website, continentaldrifter.co, is the hub for everything. You'll find all my trips and experiences there, my books, all the gear that I use, podcasts, blog posts, everything, my YouTube channel, everything is at the hub, continentaldrifter.co.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. And thank you for all of you in this audience for listening to this episode and for staying with us and learning all about tours. And if you're interested about learning more about my program, Mastering the Art of Retreat Planning or Mastering the Art of Corporate Retreat Planning, go below and book a call with me and let's just figure out if this is the right fit for you. Thank you so much. See you next episode.
Wow, what a great episode. If you like our podcast, How to Run Profitable Retreats, leave us a review and share it with a friend.